Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. My name is Randall Richmond, and I'm the Director of Athletics here at Kent State University and a proud graduate of the NCAA Charles Wickham Leadership Institute. The Leadership Institute helped me refine who I was as a man well before focusing on who I was as an administrator. Within the program, I developed lifelong friendships, colleagues, and confidants to help me discover my true purpose in this profession, which is to be a transformational leader that has a positive impact on people's lives well beyond sports. And as the great orator Big Sean often says, the energy you give is what you manifest. Peace.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today is Derita Dawkins. Derita has a lot of titles, and let's read them all. Assistant Vice Chancellor, Deputy Athletics Director for Student Athlete Wellness, Senior Woman Administrator, and Sport Admin for Women's Basketball, right?
That's it.
They don't just give titles to people, right? You got to earn those. And realistically, thinking about your career, right? I met you a long time ago. I think you were AD at Kentucky State, but you spent some time at Kentucky State. Between Kentucky State and Arkansas was UAB, and you were at UAB for
8.5
years, was it? And you've been in college athletics for almost 30 years. So you have a wealth of experience in terms of credibility on leadership, right, is one thing I like to talk about, right? First, let's look at how they have titled you in terms of Chief Diversity Officer in Department of Athletics. They gave you the Assistant Vice Chancellor title. Tell me about those things, and then tell me about what title you like to call yourself.
Okay. So the title, the Assistant Vice Chancellor title, came from a project on campus that our Vice Chancellor for Diversity Inclusion set about, and that was getting the main DE&I person in each college or major unit elevated in title. So, and it was Project Elevate was what she called it. And she asked the deans and vice chancellors of units like athletics who the person was in their unit that handled D&I work, and to elevate them in title to at least assistant vice chancellor.
Okay.
And so that's how that came about.
That's important. Now, I was listening to a podcast, and I'm a podcaster who listens to podcasts, and they talked about, what do they call it? Myth and almost like pomp and circumstance of DEI, right? In terms of titles, things like that. And you come across as a person who a title's not enough. What are we doing behind this title? So tell me about when they made that decision. What was the action or influence they gave you that goes along with it?
For me, it wasn't necessarily a change in anything I did, but I understood the broader context of it on our campus. Elevating that role across the campus. Given where I sat already in the structure in our athletics department, I already had the latitude to do some things, to entertain some conversations, to initiate action. So it was more in camaraderie with those across campus who needed that. And in higher education, titles are important, right?
Right.
It says something about where you are, what you can do, what you have access to. So I understood what the project was about. And my athletics director, who is a vice chancellor, very willingly agreed, oh, yes, no problem. And the vice chancellor for diversity, equity, and inclusion, Dr. Yvette Murphy-Irby, wanted there to be a monetary piece to these promotions across campus. And so she had a small pool of money to do some of that with. And Hunter said, no, we're good. I'll take care of Derita. Yeah. So again, that spoke to where we were anyway. So
what's interesting about your career is you've seen a number of changes, right? Change can be good or bad. And, you try to be stable and not change with the change, but evolve as change happens around you. Thinking about UAB was in an interesting situation where, they started football, and football was stopped, not on their decision, but other people's decisions. And then they restarted football. And even thinking about what the athletics director has done down there in terms of building things and fundraising and getting facilities. Talk to us a little bit about where you were at that period and how you handled that time, which I believe was a bit tumultuous in terms of
It was
UAB.
tumultuous indeed, professionally, and for me personally. I have a very small family, and one of my first cousins, his son was a freshman on our
Oh
football
wow,
team.
yeah.
So yes, it was professional and personal at that point. I will say a lot of what I take out of that period is um, confirmation of who I have tried to be to my colleagues. There was, needless to say, a point at times. So the shutdown was December 14th, I believe was the date, and the restart was in June. So it was 6 months of a shutdown. But within 4 to 5 weeks of the initial announcement, people started looking for jobs. Like I turned down offers to look at a number of athletic director jobs before because they were at institutions that didn't have football. And I was like, yeah, that's not where I choose to be. I love football.
Hmm.
And I want to be able to go to football games. And it brings things to a campus that I want to be a part of. So I understood people, looking for other opportunities. But I went into a head coaches meeting and I told our coaches, I am going to be here as long as they will let me be here, trying to help us, weather this, come out the other side, whatever that looks like. And it made me think back to a time in my career at another institution where there was lots of change during my tenure. And the president, during one of those changes, told me, "You're the glue. People are going to be looking to you for stability. And so I need you to provide that." And so that's been something that wasn't necessarily positive in that conversation, but resonated with me from there forward, about who to be and how to be for people. Um, because in the midst of chaos, things tend to slow down for me. Um, it just moves slower. Like I see it differently. And I think that's a skill, as one of my best friends tells me, God puts me in difficult places because I'm made for it. So I looked at that situation, said, what can I do for these people? And so during that 6 month period, and so trying to think through all of that timeline, because I was gone from UAB before the first game got played.
Oh wow, okay.
Um, and I went back for that game because I told Jeff Long had hired me at Arkansas by then, and I told him, I said, but I have to be there for that first game, in the fall of 2017. And he was like, I understand completely. I was like, yeah, I have to see this all the way through, even though I've left employment there. But that whole experience taught me so many lessons and verified so many things for me. I said some things to university leadership during that time that, I don't know, maybe could have gotten me fired.
Yeah.
And I knew that in saying them,
Hmm.
but they were truthful things. They were things that needed to be said for people in the department who couldn't say them, and for us to move forward in a healthy way. Because to leave it all unsaid would have been wounds to fester over time, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, which is interesting to be the calm in chaos, right? And then to be able to say things that everybody can't say. Sometimes when you're the glue, you can do that, right? Because they know how important you are. But then they also know that if this person is saying it, this is probably something that we really need to consider in whatever decisions we make for the future. You're at Arkansas. I've been there since 2017. There's been some changes there since 2017. I don't know if it's chaos, which you consider chaos, because a lot of it's just college athletics, right?
just college athletics, for sure.
But talk about the application of that skill that you have come into the industry with, right, and taken with you everywhere. The application of that at Arkansas through AD change, coaches change, and a number of different things.
I think it's a matter of being sober minded, right? Life is all about changes. I didn't grow up with a lot. So the idea of having to pivot to adjust to what is just life to me. It's not anything harrowing. It doesn't require you to dig deep, or it doesn't require me to dig deep, because I just see that as what life brings. So in those moments of change, it's like, okay, let me stop for 15 minutes and be really sad about this. And then I got to figure out what I got to do to keep going. And so one of the first changes for me, again, Jeff Long hired me to come to Arkansas. I started on May 15th, and November 15th, he left the university. So literally 6 months to the day after I got there, and I'd already known Jeff for 20 years at that point. And so it was, okay, well, what's next? I did a number of things like changed my withholdings on my paycheck and reduced the amount of money that I was putting in retirement and put it into, so I was like, I need to have some cash on hand.
Make it accessible,
I don't know
right.
what's about to come. So let me stop maxing out on my 401 and 457 and put some of that in the bank so that I've got some cash should I need to, live on savings for a couple of months till I find another job, because I don't know who the new athletic director will be and what he or she will or won't want relative to me being here in this position. So, and it was just a matter of, wait and see. Let's see who it is. When he or she comes in, go in, have the conversation. Do you wish me to serve as part of your administration? I mean, because to me, if you've gotten to that seat, you have earned the right to have the people on your team that will complement what you need. And if that's not me, that's not personal.
Yeah. It's a business decision.
It's a business decision.
Yeah,
and, I'm a big girl. I, go on and figure out the next step. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I want to again read these titles that you have, right? Assistant Vice Chancellor, Deputy Athletics Director for Student Athlete Wellness, and the Senior Women Administrator, also Chair of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And titles and responsibilities, we look at bios and they say a lot of things about people. But if you ask somebody, what exactly is it that you do? Like, which one of your titles is the one that defines you? Many people would say it's something completely different than what you read.
Yeah.
I wonder if I ask you that question about what exactly is it? Well, I ask you two-part. What is it that you do actually there at Arkansas? And then if Hunter Yurachek were sitting here and I asked him a question, what does Derita do? How would he answer the question?
Hunter would say, Derita asks lots of questions. What I do is, in my opinion, provide guidance, but stay out of the way.
Okay.
And I definitely take that approach to sport supervision. Currently, I'm only the sport supervisor for women's basketball. While one of our staff members is out on maternity leave, I'm kind of pitch hitting a little bit with soccer as needed and gymnastics as needed. But I'd let them know I'm here. If you need me, I'm here. I think the way you approach those relationships is like any other relationship. You've got to manage what is needed in that relationship, not as a sport administrator, in that relationship as a sport administrator, because the way I'm going to navigate my relationship with a person who's been a head coach for 20 years is very different than somebody who's been a head coach for 20 weeks. I'm going to be much more involved with that younger coach and still figuring out what it is they need. Relative to what I do per my job description is service supervisor for mental health and performance, nutrition, and our strength and conditioning coaches and our athletic trainers. So all of those services that touch our student athletes. Part of that, the structure luckily was there at Arkansas already. It's what I've believed in for a long time, because we talk about a holistic approach to student athlete care, and having those all together provides that. I think what I have on Twitter is what I think I do, and that is build bridges.
Okay.
I think building relationships is really important in just about anything, but certainly in our business. And so when I can help the director of our mental health and performance form a good relationship with our director of sports medicine, such that we have a more seamless care system for our student athletes, both mentally and physically, then I've done my job. It's less about making sure they've done their evaluations as it is, do we have the relationships and the systems in place for our student athletes to succeed and for those professionals to succeed too? So yeah, I would say probably bridge builder, thought provoker, because a lot of questions I ask, this won't be a surprise to some people, but a lot of the questions I ask them so that other people think about what they've said or done or haven't said or done. So And there are times that I'm asking questions legit for information because I don't understand. And I think that's an important piece that we don't get a lot of times. We get to, and by we, I say people in leadership positions, we get to a certain status and we shy away from asking questions because we think we should only be giving answers. I think there is a value to asking questions. You can learn a whole lot more.
Yeah, of course, I agree with that 100%. I'll touch on a couple of things here before we wrap. First, the building bridges. Does everybody, when you tie two people together, sometimes people don't know they're being tied together, right? If you're good at building bridges, they don't even know that the bridge is being built until they realize that it's a synergy. There are times when people don't realize that that's necessary. Have you come across times when you tried to make a relationship and the people may not have wanted to work with each other, but it took time for them to see that it was a good dynamic? Tell us a little bit about how that works in terms of there's a magic to it, there's a skill to it in terms of getting people to work together.
I think it depends on when I was doing it and so where I was in the structure.
Right.
Because I am a firm believer. When I took the athletic director position at Kentucky State, one of the first staff meetings I had, I told the staff, I'm going to ask your opinion when I can, but there will be times that we're going to do a thing because I said so. I'm going to try to have as few of those as possible, but there will be times, and you need to know that at the beginning of this relationship, there will be times that it's just going to be because I said so and because I know it's the best thing for us. You might see it later, you might not, but just know that's where it's coming from. So there have definitely been times with those relationships where I've had to say, look, I know you don't want to work together, but if you're going to be in these positions, you're going to do these things. You don't have to like it. That's icing on the cake. But for what we need right now, this is what I need you to do. If you don't want to do that, then let me know, because we need someone here who wants to do that, because that's what's best for us at this point. And this is about the organization. It's not about me personally. It's not about you personally. It's about the organization. It's about the student athlete. So this is what we need done. Let me know if you can do it.
It's interesting. As a fellow question asker, do you ever have to turn it off?
Yes.
All the there's time. Times when I have to say, okay, I'm gonna just sit this time. I'm not gonna ask a bunch of questions.
So not to do a promo for a product, but I have a notebook now, a Remarkable.
Oh yeah,
that I absolutely love because I'm a note taker and I can go back. I still have notebooks from the 90s.
Wow.
Where I used to literally a composition book, just writing notes in meetings or whatever. And I learned over time trying to manage my face and all those questions that sometimes just pop up on my face. I'll write it in my notes. It may be something as simple as I absolutely do not understand why, they would think that's a good idea, but it gets it out.
All right. So,
and I can continue to hear. I can continue to listen to whatever the conversation might be and not get distracted by the questions, because I do think literally in questions.
Yeah.
And it is infuriating for some people, my husband included. I'm like, no, literally, I'm asking the question because I don't know. Yeah. I don't understand.
It's not a critique.
It's not a critique. It is a question. Like I'm trying, because one of my core needs is to be understood and to understand. And so I'm always kind of trying to get there. I'm like always this back and forth negotiation of trying to understand more. Because I feel like if I understand your perspective, if I understand what you're trying to get to, when you throw something out, I've got somewhere to put it. I've got a context in which to receive that.
Right.
If I don't have that understanding, that could go anywhere. It could miss me completely. It could hit me wrong. I mean, all kinds of things. So for me, that's what asking questions. And I had the fortune of having two parents who believed in knowledge versus education. And my mother was a teacher, but they wanted to know what I knew, not what dates I could regurgitate or whatever. So there were always questions being asked. And if I asked my father how to spell a word, he would ask me, what did it begin with?
Right.
And keep going until I had, the root of a word. And then he'd go, okay, so you're trying to figure out how to spell schedule. You got the SCHED. that's a good place to start in the dictionary. And send me to the dictionary.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be I ask a question, I get an answer. It was another question to get me to find the answer for myself.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, that's interesting. My thought process is like I make decisions on life, every decision, whether to take a step this way or that way based on the information I gather. And so I have to ask questions to get the information. And, the question doesn't always have to be verbal, right?
Yes.
But you're gathering information. I love that. I appreciate a fellow question asked. You know who else's one is Brian Blair, athletic director at Toledo. I'll ask this last question, then we'll wrap.
Okay.
We get to a point in our career sometimes where when we're young, we're searching for relevance, then we're searching for credibility. And after a while, we start finding ways where we can be influential, right? From relevance to credibility to actually having influence. And I imagine being in the industry for almost 30 years, you're probably at a point where influence is important to you. Talk to me about leadership development, about influencing people, and about where you want to take that as you go on to, if you could become an athletic director again, if you, wherever your life takes you, right? You become the president of Canada.
To the beach. My life will be
Right.
taking me to the beach.
But influence, right? Influence, leadership development, and just making sure you have an impact on the people around you.
Well, I'll start off with, I don't know how important influence is to me.
Okay.
I believe that it is my responsibility to bring what I have to the table, so to speak. What anyone does with that is on them. It's not on me.
Okay.
My job is to bring what I have. I had to learn that lesson the hard way because I would get upset when I brought things to the table to help avert a crisis, if you will, that wasn't taken, and the crisis comes, and now I'm part of the cleanup crew. But I had to literally one year put it on the altar on Christmas Eve. On New Year's Eve, I'm sorry, and say, okay, I understand it is not my job, my responsibility to make sure what I bring is used.
Right.
It is my job to bring it.
Yeah.
So I have at different stops said to young people, you are going to come meet with me twice. You may never meet with me again, but you are going to come twice.
Yeah.
After that, it's on you. But I know where they were developmentally, they weren't going to come unless I required them, which means they weren't going to get some things they might need. Again, I'm going to give it to you twice. The third time's on you. So again, that idea that I know over almost 30 years of working in the business and 55 years of being alive, I've had some experiences and I have something to give. It also isn't for everybody. So I was sharing with someone earlier, when young people reach out, whether it's, an email or a text, such and such told me to call you, like it's incumbent upon me to try to find time for as many of those as I can, because I am on my way out and I want to leave empty. I want to give what I have to people who are going to still be in this. And that means making myself available. That means being approachable. But influence, again, there's a AD here from a junior college who was one of my women's basketball student athletes at Kentucky State.
Yeah.
And so to see her here, and those are the kinds of things that just kind of warm me. And I wouldn't say that I intended to have any influence, but those are some of the things that that Dion has said to me. I appreciate this when you are my athletic director, and those are some of the things that I think about doing. And
it sounds like it's not necessarily about the outcome, right?
It's the process.
Where influence could be about, you want to make sure they do the positive thing with the information you give them, but it's more about giving them information. Coaches used to say, when I was in the coaching world, I can put you in a position to make the play. It's up to you to make the play, right?
Exactly.
But I've done my job as a coach to get you to where you have to make the play.
I want to help you develop the tools. What you do with the tools is on you.
It's on you. Well, Derita, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining me here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. That was Derita Dawkins. Derita is the Assistant Vice Chancellor and Deputy Athletics Director for Student Athlete Wellness and a Senior Woman Administrator at University of Arkansas. And of course, this is Ty Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.